So here it is, all sort of the basics done. You can see I added those little like glue, grayish little splotches in between on the lighter parts. Just randomly made little shapes, and the whole thing I did everywhere on the top, just to give it some interest. And it looks like the pictures I've seen of the actual airplane. There's something in there. Um, the bottoms, I've added all the decals, as you can see. I gloss coated it once it was done, let that dry. Now I added my decals, and then I gloss coated it again. That way it's nice and shiny, and it's ready for the next step. Later on we'll dull coat and add things like exhaust stains I'm trying to point out there. But this is ready to do some very delicate panel washes. And so what I did was use this stuff, which is basically real thin black. You could make your own with no problem with a lot of thinner. Because you've got, in this case, I used Future floor wax. It's not going to harm anything. You're going above the Future, and then if you use like mineral spirits to clean these off, you're not going to hurt anything because it's not going to go through the Future. So what you're doing is picking out little things that you want to have darker, just slightly darker. I think this can be very overdone. A lot of people just slop this on all over the airplane or the tank or whatever they're making. I tend to do it in very discrete little areas like this, so I have less to clean up later. I just find it's less messy that way. I get better results if I do that. Your mileage may vary. But all I'm doing is going through all these places, and these are all the pan lines that I put in, and there's some that are on the kit. But all I'm trying to do is just highlight them a little bit. I do not want this to look like a draftsman's drawing in the end. I just want it to look a little highlighted. So you let this stuff dry. It doesn't take long because I think it's highly volatile stuff. Let it dry, and then you come back with, in this case, mineral spirits and a little cotton bud. So put some mineral spirits in that top. And all you do, the technique here is very simple. You dampen the little bud, and you can use just a paper towel too, but make sure you run, perpendicular crossways to the little panel line. Don't run along it because then you'll remove the color. So what I'm doing with this little cotton swab is I'm able to very carefully and adeptly go at the direction I want to go. A paper towel tends to be just a larger piece, and to me this is a nice, more delicate. If you smash black over everything, then yeah, a paper towel makes sense. But if you do it like this, you can do it with a cotton swab. But again, just make sure you go not along the trench. If you go along the trench, you're in trouble. See, like that, I'm going perpendicular to get that middle piece, and it slowly. This can dry overnight, and you can still come back and pull it off. It might take a little more scrubbing, but it works. So don't panic if something like that happens to you and you're like, uh-oh. But you can see the color disappearing, that black disappearing, and what's left behind is that fine little line, which is exactly what I wanted. I don't want, my panel lines are basically they're very light. The kit ones, of course, are much heavier, but mine are very light, and that's all I wanted. I don't want this, again, to look like a drawing. Sometimes people do this, and to me it looks too much like that. So I speed this up because all I'm doing is showing you doing this, the same thing all the way around. But every time the watchword, like I said, is perpendicular to the line. But you just keep doing this over the whole airplane, wherever you want it. I ended up doing parts of the fuselage and the tails as well later, but there it is. Now I came back with a little paper towel and just sort of dried off the mineral spirits. You could just let it flash off itself. But now I just think it looks a little better, makes me feel better that it's not all shiny and wet. But that's the basics, and that's all the more panel line washing I personally prefer to do. Okay, everybody, so what I did with this was after I did the panel lines, I let everything dry, and then I coated it all with dull coat. And so now it's sort of dead flat. And I don't know if I should have used maybe a satin finish. I'm not sure, but we're going to go with this. And so what I'm going to do now is, once this is all dull coated, blah, 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 panel lines are good enough as far as I'm concerned. Now I'm going to put in some weathering. So I'm going to try to put in some streaks on the exhaust, and maybe dirty up a few places that I want to dirty up, or outline some control surfaces, gas caps, whatever. So that's what we're going to do now. Alrighty, so I am ready to go here. I've just masked off the cowlings because this is where I'm going to start putting my exhaust streaks, right by those little exhaust stubs. So I want to mask that because I don't want to get any on here. I want to look obvious that it's coming from underneath the cowling and mostly on those pieces. I took a bunch of alcohol, that sounds bad, a bunch of isopropanol, put it in my airbrush cup, and I did a mixture of some brown, in this case some black rubber is what I grabbed, but you could use any kind of darkish color. And it's very, very thin. It's super thin. And what I'm going to try to do is use that color and start trying to airbrush this. Try to make these little streaks, and we'll see if you can see it. I'm trying to do this better than I've done it in the past here. So I'm going to start by seeing if I can sort of, you got to get the thickness of the paint right. Got to figure out if it's the right thing. I don't think it is. I think it's too thin right now. Although, keep doing it and pull it up in layers. Is what I always tell people, all the thousands of followers. But I do think it's a little bit, it is starting to stain it. It is starting to stain it. I don't know if you guys can see it. It is starting to stain it a little bit. You compare like this side, get all the light, to this side. There is a little bit happening, but I think I need to add a little bit more oomph to this. So I'm going to do that off camera, and then we're going to try again. Okay, let's try this. Blast this out of here. So this is my new color. Let's see if that helps. Maybe it's a little smidgen darker. Try again. I should turn the power down a little bit. I'm gonna kind of slow down my airbrush a little bit. A little less air might be in order. Might be easier to control, maybe. All right, let's try it again. Oh, I think it's coming. You can always add more. That's the beauty of this. And I put it on nice and slow. And if it looks like it's, not dark enough or the wrong color, since it's so thin, you can go back and fix it. But that's starting. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's definitely starting to look like some staining on that side. I'll try on this side, try to make them about the same. And all I'm doing is following along where I think the air would go. And this kind of stuff is fun to do. If you've never done it, don't be afraid. You really can't mess it up, especially if you're going thin like this. You can always, if it's thin, you can stop. And generally speaking, you stop before you think it's good. And then you kind of reevaluate the situation. Because my assumption is, for instance, it would be darker near the exhaust and taper off into nothing. And you want kind of dirty brown, black, color here. I'm going to concentrate a little bit more on the front part. See if I can make that work better. And they don't have to be straight back either. I mean, yeah, that makes sense, but at the same time, they could be sort of kitty corner, kitty wampus. Depends on, you know, how dirty the fuel was at that point, that day. You know, the blackbirds didn't give them the right kind of fuel. There could be all kinds of reasons why it might not be. On that particular day, something stained really dark, and it kind of whipped to one side. Because you look at exhausts on airplanes, they aren't always just flying straight back. But see, that's starting to look pretty cool. I hope you can see that. I can't really tell if you can. I'm trying to get the sheen out of the wing there. Let's throw some on the bottom and see if, I don't know what this color is going to look like on the bottom. It might not look very good, but let's see what happens. Or it might be amazing. I don't know. It might be really obvious on the bottom. Because remember, this isn't black. The bottom is a real dark chocolate color. And I might have to add more gray to that to make it look a little better. And I probably should do this when the landing gear is on there, because now I'm going to have to figure out how the landing gear would look. So we're going to leave that alone. We're not going to mix a new color for the bottom. We don't got to do it much. But this, kind of chuffed by the top. You know, it's just starting to look a little filthy. It's working hard. It's going on long reconnaissance missions. Maybe it's carrying a bomb load once in a while. So it's just, you know, it's starting to work hard. So while we got this in here, it's kind of an okay color. I'm going to take a few of these pieces that are things like little bits of like fuel, place where they add fuel. And again, you can't see this so well, I'm sure, but it's amazing how it actually looks pretty good. Part of the problem is there's so much weird camouflage on here, it's hard to tell. But that's okay. I'm okay with that. But that actually, if I do a couple of these things, I don't even know what these are, but I'm figuring something greasy might be coming out of that. Yeah, what the heck, you know? And then I got some more over on this side. That's got to be this piece over here has got to be a gas thing. And what's nice about this is it's thin, but if you're looking at it live, you can tell when you're putting stuff down. It's a little wet. And you can dry it by just pushing on the trigger and not pulling back. I mean, that basically will dry it almost instantaneously. So we'll put a little bit on this guy. Cool. All right. So now that's actually going really well. I am liking the exhausts. I might darken it a little bit so that I can get the parts that are right at the exhaust tips a little darker. Oh, and notice, by the way, I got the tip off of the airbrush because that way I can do these really fine lines, which is great. Yeah, that's already looking pretty good. This is such a fine, and once in a while, by the way, blast it out, pull the trigger all the way back and throw it on a Kleenex, because that'll help you kind of clear it and it'll maybe spray a little better sometimes. I'm going to take this color because I kind of like it, and I'm going to put it on a few other places here. Maybe a few panel lines, maybe around some aileron control surfaces. I know that these airplanes had, like, the ailerons are almost detached, or the flaps are almost detached. It's a Junkers after all. So I might put some tape along here and put some streaks so that there's like grease and stuff and dirt that would come and accumulate on these, on that flap, for instance. I'm gonna do that, probably with this color, and then I'll come back and show you what I got. But that's basically the process. And then I might darken, like I said, those pieces. But that's just basically how it goes. And man, I do like those. I hope it comes through in the video. There might be too subtle, but start with too subtle. You can always increase it. Sweet. All right, so I went inside now because I'm hoping you can see things a little better with the better lens. But you can see that I've accentuated those exhaust lines. I also accentuated the area, the dirtiness around these flaps. I don't know if that's that accurate, but it adds some interest, that's for sure. I also did a couple of, picked out a few things like control surfaces, a few panel lines I wanted to accentuate just to make it look more interesting. And now we're going to take these off and see if that worked. The idea is that if you that way, hopefully the cowling will look kind of, there'll be a definite demarcation between the cowling and the exhaust. So let's see if that actually worked. Take this tape off, because then all that's left is to sort of do paint chipping. That'll be exciting. So let's take this off and see if the effect worked. See, I think it did, because now there's definitely, it's dirty past this. And that's kind of what I wanted to show, that this was a, this bad gas, low octane, whatever it is. It's not that wonderful, and it's leaving all that mess. So at least that was my intent. I'm figuring this airplane worked hard, and so that's what happened. And I can always darken these a little bit if I want to, but I think the effect is pretty good, especially when we actually pick out these little exhausts with some paint. I also, that looks pretty good, I think. You can see the color changes. That's cool. And the exhaust looks like exhaust. I carried the exhaust stains back to the tail slightly, to the stabilizer, just a little bit. I also mixed some lighter, like a light gray, into what I had, and I sprayed these and carried those back to the tails, the stabilizers as well, thinking that on the black it might show. I'm thinking of like pictures of black widows and stuff. Looks kind of, there's a light color to them. I don't know what that means, but that's what I'm doing. That way I can see this exhaust. I'll pick out some of these panels a little bit later, but overall, the top, except for chipping with a Prismacolor pencil, silver, the top is pretty much done. I can start adding other things to it, but I think it looks pretty snazzy. Let me see if I can pull this off of here and show this a little better. Yeah, you can definitely see the different sort of colorations, and with some paint chipping in there, I think this will look really, really snaz. I think this will look really good. So that is how I do it. I like post shading more than pre-shading because I enjoy doing the airbrushing. I don't know if one's better than the other. It's probably just up to preference, but this is what I've always done because I feel like I can control it better afterwards. I know what the airplane looks like. I know to me it works better. But anyway, there it is, and we are certainly well on our way to having a nice Ju-188. Sweet. Okay, one more little thing. Let's just take our little silver pencil and just demonstrate kind of how I do this anyway. You can take this and just tap it in places where you think there'd be some chipping, probably on leading edges. There might be some paint chipping. I don't know how long these airplanes lasted. They might not have lasted as long as some. But you figure, like, if there's people working on the airplane, you know, maybe they scuff it. Maybe some panel lines would have places that have a little highlight of silver on them. The idea is to make it random and make it look like paint chips. And you can play with this forever. You can also overdo it. And you can see against something dark, it really shows up. So you have to, you know, you have to be careful, and it's really up to the individual modeler. I've seen it really overdone. I've overdone it many times, but it also adds a fair amount of interest. So it's kind of hard to say, nah, don't do it. So I'm going to go through and tap this thing around to what I think looks okay, mostly concentrating on leading edges, you know, cowling edges, things like that, and some panels here and there where I imagine that people would be working on the equipment, etc., to make this thing look good. Anyway, that is how you do that. Super, super, super easy. And you can also kind of remove it if you need to. So I like using these.